Hello, everyone. So this is my presentation for my final. I researched the topic about space economy and the space industry within the global market and how that has affected both public and private sectors in bond and stock markets. So my title is Impact the Space Economy has had on bond yields and investments within those industries. Here's an overview of the table of contents. And we'll start off with my abstract. So just kind of giving you some background. In the past decade, the space industry has made its impact around the world, advancing humanity to unlock the next technological innovations and radically changing the inflections of investments in bond and stock markets. And one of the big reasons, as we'll get into, why investors have become so interested in it is because of the great promise of the returns that they'll get. And as seeing like the advances that it makes for overall society, because it really influences telecommunications with cellular data, with streaming, networking, and security overall of the government. So it backs up the defense and nationality of individual countries. It also boosts the economy in terms of decreasing unemployment because it's brought in a lot of new jobs and been able to use the resources of having people work behind research and development. And lastly, we'll look as well as some of the revenues that have made an impact in both public and private sectors, and some of the debt that has also come from government funding. But all of them are in service for commercial satellites and other things like that. So yes, space research and investment has an array of players, from individual investors to long-term government funding. In light of this movement, it's critical to analyze the reasons behind these trends, as well as the benefits and possible implications that factor in risks. These risks include liquidity, operational, and credit risk that each investor takes into account and correlates with prices and yields of bonds within large and small space companies. So the results gathered from these factors will aid in indicating the current impact bond markets face and guide the overall conclusive indicators and the patterns and movements of industries within the space industry. And these are all like estimates, which will get into my limitations. And so some of the major influential countries have invested massive amounts of money in expanding space innovation and supporting technological advancements. The funding has created a new sector in the market, both in bonds and stocks. Therefore, it is vital to explore how the expansion of the space industry, including both government-funded and private-owned companies, are being affected. So the question being raised here that I looked into was, what are the major impacts of movement this industry has seen in credit risks and investment trends in major economic powerhouses within the market over the past 10 years? And also just interested in looking at the future of this industry. So as I already talked, it has gained a lot more traction and influence on the fluctuation of the markets. And there's also, because it's happened in the past 10 years, and it's also been affected like many other industries with the pandemic. But that's not the focus of my research. So this fast rising industry is seen as the most influential market to arise in the global economy. So it is important to see the potential risks and benefits and overall impacts it has on the movement of cash and investments. So some of the research that has already been done has been really capturing the current influences investors are yearning to see their hopes of yielding high returns, and why that is, and the movement of where the investors are hedging towards. And also this includes an analysis over the profits on bond reliability in firms such as SpaceX and NASA, which are big government-funded firms. What NASA is, and SpaceX is independent and private company. So there's an immense amount of research showing which countries are invested in space research and how much money each individual economy has supplemented into the sector that has influenced its growth. In addition, there's been new tracking of investors switching from U.S. Treasury backed space investments to private enterprises. So the main research questions that I've seen in research of this is the future expansion on what the money invested is going to affect in terms of socioeconomic factors. There's also been more research done on the innovations of space evolution and how it provides national security. So looking more at the theories and qualitative effects rather than quantitative. So the research revolves around technological advancements and interest in economic impacts of those in the public eye. So there's many limitations with my research. The main one being finding evidence in terms of raw data, because there was a lot of obstacles to attain those figures, because a lot of them were very confidential, and the ones that I could find were only estimates and based on hypotheses or future guesses of what those investments are in and what impacts they have on credit risks and liquidation. So I didn't really have a lot of like hardcore evidence to back my findings. So kind of just analyzing in general what the investments have had an impact globally. Another limitation is comparing the growth in different countries in which sectors their consumers are investing in. So the data is retrievable, but little analysis of concretely evaluating the impacts of individual countries' investments and the impacts it has globally. So in addition, the specific use of those investments are not always public, as governments want to protect the information for national security. So a lot of them you had to pay for or have a specific account that I looked into. And maybe I could spend more time researching into other ways, or maybe other books that have been published with public information. But I unfortunately did not find many. So yeah, for the information that was available, I looked at the micro level of interest bond fluctuations and the implications that they have on the global economy, whether they're beneficial or detrimental, but they are difficult to quantify. So in selecting my data, I first identified who are the big participants in the countries and companies are gaining the most attention. This helps narrow down the regional sector and selecting which information to gather from. So the overall market fluctuations remain mostly in the US and Europe and Asia. Furthermore, it's vital to look at the concept behind the risks and macroeconomic effects that remain in and day out shifts of investments. Those factors are quantifiable by analyzing the bond yields and the correlation between the certainty of payback held within each investment. So within the space industry, it can be categorized into two different factions. So public and private funding, which is my focus of my research, and looking at the indicators can provide necessary information to evaluate the impacts the industry has seen in the past 10 years. So first off, with starting with some background, I looked at what are factors that are measurable to see how much funding each individual country has been receiving. So the US is top, and then Russia and France and China and Japan are the top 5. So they're paving the way for mainly public sector, but in the US in the past 5 years, actually, the private investment sector has increased a lot. So these are the top 20 regions in space related to patents, because that's been up and rising, and investors are really interested in that. So so these decisions have impacted private investments greatly, as they see that it's valuable opportunity in terms of profitability for those that have patents, because they've seen that they're reliable but still hold risk because these are private sector ones. You can see the California is the top one, and then Japan and South Korea is right over there in the left with less than 60% of shared patents. Also looking further into the private sector, you can see that these big named companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook, they are really investing in large portfolio funds within space investment, and you can see what activity they are looking more into. In the earlier years, in 2000s, there's more research. Now it's more launching in data and innovation and technology. So on this next graph, CNBC reporter said that these are the those that build rockets and satellites, such as SpaceX and the other ones mentioned, are liquidating $7.9 billion in value. So they see that they are being invested in, and they're also having revenues. So kind of looking at this, you can see that the angel individual investors and venture capital in the early 2000s, very little, and then it continues to increase as private investors become more popular. So analyzing this, I was like, why are they like, why is the private sector, why did that increase a lot? It was because they had 15 years of near zero interest rate environments, which encourages risk taking for investors. So that was the main reason why they did that, meaning that the credit risk was kind of high, but they decided to take the risk because of the low interest rates. So kind of in conclusion of what my research gave is insights on global economic trends and the movement of private and public sectors, identified government interest and reasoning behind the vast amount of funding plugged into the space industry, as well as why it shifted to public or private. And in retrospect, the topic of credit risk and liquidity risk could be further unfolded within this research with proper data and specific insight in comparing the effects of investment of this industry to other rising industries. So I'd be more interested in kind of comparing maybe like how crypto, how that took big amounts of interest within the public eye, and what impacts that has had on both government funded things and public or private sectors. So the results presented are just the tip of the iceberg of information and have many limits in capturing the effect this capital funding has on the market, let alone future indications of its success, which would be more interesting to look at as well. And these are all the references that I looked at, and that concludes my research. Thank you for listening.